There we go. All righty, everybody. My name's Steve Lander. I'm the Director of Pavement Management for Withers Ravenel, and today's Lunch and Learn is Work Zone Traffic Control Innovations. So we're glad that you could join us. I have tried to get someone from traffic control to do this very presentation for a long time. I guess maybe everybody's out on the road busy with all the resurfacing contracts. So hope everybody's doing well. And the intent of these lunch and learns is to introduce new products, practices, and broaden your maintenance toolbox. But today we're talking about the traffic control that allows us to broaden the maintenance toolbox. And traffic control is so important on projects, and we see a lot of bad traffic control, and the consequences of that can be really bad for everybody involved. So it's such an important topic. Looking forward to hearing Mark on a subject here. In the chat area, we're going to be posting a few links. One link, if you need PDH credits, you just click on it and it'll take you to a form to fill out, and you'll get PDHs after we're done. The Withers Ravenel website, JMT Engineering. And then we'll have Mark's email address and my email address if you have questions. If you have questions during this session, you can put them into the chat and we'll try to address as many as we can. And if we don't get to all of them, we'll address them after. So like I said, those who need PDHs, you'll get one PDH for this lunch and learn. The lunch and learns are recorded, so if you have to drop off, we can get you the link that you can view this webinar, and also we'll get you a copy of the presentation in PDF format. Also, we'd like to get feedback from folks. If you could just let us know what you thought about the lunch and learn today, and if there are other topics that you would like for us to cover. We're all ears. We've been doing this since January 2021, and this is the 40th lunch and learn that we've done. So been a really good little venue for folks inside of Withers Ravenel and our clients and potential clients. So it's been great. So the format of the lunch and learn today is that Mark's going to be presenting for about 40 to 45 minutes. Everybody's on mute. So like I said, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We'll address them. And so the formal introduction, Mark Blanton has over 30 years of experience in work zone traffic control. So he's been a contractor, he's been a service provider. It's included product implementation, development, evaluation of various traffic control device manufacturers. Has served on committees to write up and develop specs. He's been full-time work zone certification trainer since 2021 with North Carolina and South Carolina. He has a sailboat, he plays the mandolin, and he has 3 grandchildren, and he's been grandparenting this week, and he's been playing with Legos. So he's trying to get his mind back into work zone traffic control. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Steve. I'm 67 years old, so I'm too old to play with Legos and to revisit those dance steps of when you're barefooted, pre-coffee, and step on a Barbie heel in the carpet. For those of you who know, you know. Thanks for letting me be here. It's always a pleasure that I get to share stuff about work zone traffic control. Steve mentioned I've been at it a long time. I started in 1990. When I got started, worked for a traffic control company as a service provider, material provider, selling stuff and renting stuff. But the person that was my manager, my boss, told me when I started, he said, traffic control is an interesting thing that we do. It's very important. It's the last thing that the contractors think about that they need, but it's the first thing they need to get started. And so my whole career has been on that arc of it's the last thing people think about, but the first thing they need, and it's up to us to make it happen. And the training follows that same arc. And we'll get into some of those things as we move through. So as I work through the presentation today, I'll share some stuff with you right out of some of the resources like the MUTCD or NCDOT standard drawings. I'm going to show a bunch of pictures and some videos and some other things. Then towards the end, I'll show some devices and some of the advances that have been made to make some of the stuff in work zone environment automated. There is a lot to digest, and it's interesting that how this has worked out. That originally I was going to present in February, and because I'm a neophyte with technology, it didn't work out. And in February, we were just accepting and becoming accustomed to the new standard drawings and the new MUTCD. Where we are now, that's kind of worked into the projects, both documents, if you will, and we're a little more accustomed to working with them. So I'll have some of those things that'll be some of the updates as well that I'll include. Naturally, like anything in this type of environment, there's a lot to digest, a lot to remember. What I hope, if you don't remember anything else that I talk about today, is how drivers respond to temporary traffic control, how we can respond to their responses and be prepared, and of course some implementation. But the one concept, if you will, that I hope you remember is when motorists are encountering work zone traffic control and there's some type of incident, accident, call it what you will, there is usually one of these three responses. One is, well, they didn't know, or I don't know. They'll say, I don't know, or didn't know that there was a work zone set up, there was going to be a flagger, there was going to be a person in the road, there was a lane closure, etc. And that could be followed by, well, I didn't see the flagger, the person, the drums, the arrow board, the cones, the signs, the whatever. And look, unfortunately, we're just coming off, a few days away from a work zone traffic control technician being run over on I-40 last Friday morning. The motorist most likely didn't see this person as he was moving from the median of I-40 back over to the right shoulder after taking down some signs. And finally, with motorists, a response that they typically don't admit to is they don't care. They don't want to be inconvenienced. They don't want to slow down. They don't want their day ruined by stopping and waiting for a flagger or the conditions that back up in traffic when you have to merge and change lanes. Other evidence of people not caring, if you ask me, is the cell phone that folks seem to be constantly paying attention to when they're driving, because they don't care enough about the environment around them. They're more dialed into their phone, so to speak, instead of paying attention to what's there. So don't know, don't see, don't care. Those are some of the things to think about as we apply these principles to traffic control. So as far as don't know, the devices that need to be set in place maybe are not set in place where they can be seen, or the work zone traffic control setup is poor and not compliant with the standards either set forth in MUTCD or NCDOT standard drawings. What we can do about that is make sure that the work zones are set up in a compliant manner, following the guidances that we have. This is an example. This video, this was in Cary, on Cary Parkway, a couple of years ago, of a potential, how do we get the information to the motorist so we get a controlled response instead of a knee-jerk sudden reaction. So here's an example of maybe a poor traffic control setup. I'll let you be the judge of that. So a contractor that does work zone traffic control called me one morning and asked if I was in town. I live in Cary and I travel around a lot. And if so, could I come out to a project where they were getting ready to set up in a lane closure on Cary Parkway, downstream of the one that's in the video? I asked, well, what's the problem? She wouldn't tell me over the phone. She just wanted to know, is there any way I could come out there? I eventually met her in a parking lot. I drove, she videoed. She goes, I'm just going to video it because it's hard to describe what's going on it. By the time we took the video, these people had been in the road over an hour. If you're going to take away a lane in traffic of a multi-lane divided roadway such as this one, there's a certain series of signs that you would need to see in addition to, you'd get to these signs before you got to an arrow board with a taper of drums or cones or some other channelizing device. Instead, we have two signs. They're not regulation height. They're not in the median. They're just on the shoulder. And then we have three guys standing in the road. They'd been standing there doing what they were doing, waving traffic away for an hour and a half. So it's a setup for the motorist to really not know what's going on. And if they encounter somebody standing in the road, then they're forced to make a reaction instead of a response based on given information that they can respond to, that they'd have to move over and merge into the left lane. So a knee-jerk response in this case might be slam on the brakes, which would have a consequence, or swerve to the left, also a consequence, or not paying attention because they're texting and they run somebody over. I'll give credit to the folks with the town of Cary who actually used this video in some seminars that they put on for people doing this type of work, encroaching in the right of way in the town of Cary. Hopefully it had an impact and things improved after that. So we'll go on by and see what they were doing. They were installing conduit for fiber optic. I'm sorry, yeah, fiber optic lines being put up there. That was 2019 when that took place. Another example of how do we let people know what's going on. This was on 64 Apex. You can see the potentially, I hope everybody can see the potential problem here. I drove through this and I'm like, oh, come on. And I went back, made a U-turn, parked on the shoulder, took the picture. Both signs on both the right shoulder and the median told me there was a right lane closed, but then showed me that the left lane was closed. So what is it you're supposed to do if you don't know properly? Taken at night, gas line work. Again, this was on Maynard Road. It seems like I'm really picking on Cary or this part of Wake County. No intention. It's just, convenient for where I live, so to speak. So as you come to that railroad crossing there at Chatham and Maynard, nighttime lane closure, and they took away 2 lanes, forced everybody into the turn lane. They had 1 sign and 1, 2, 3, 4 cones to move everyone over. So it's a potential for someone to not know in advance to be able to make a proper merge to get out of the way or not run into what's happening next, which would be people there working. For motorists that don't see, the device is not placed properly or with a sufficient sign height as an example, or things that are required like truck mounted attenuators and adequate buffer space, other passive work zone elements. In this video, well, I'll let you watch it and let you be the judge of how this works itself out. You notice the timestamp there, 10:29 in the morning. So I imagine these guys are talking about where they're going to go for lunch. That's probably the conversation that's happening. The issue here is if we went back, I have not practiced reversing this. If we go back and if we think and keep in mind, don't know, don't see, when we get up to what's going on, really, do we know there's a flagger there? The signs are missing. And then, unfortunately, this flagger is standing in the middle of the road in the shade, a little bit difficult to see. Motorists, for some reason, not paying attention. Poor placement of the flagger there. So it's a setup for a potential problem. Unfortunately, we didn't see a tragedy, which could have very, very easily happened there. Then finally, we have motorists that don't care. Maybe they see the devices, they want to run around them, go down the shoulder, they're speeding, driving around cones, just not paying attention. Some of the things that we can do about it is making sure that we do have positive protection, proper buffer spaces when these traffic control environments are set up, temporary traffic control zones, and then law enforcement as needed. and there's paving operation. The motorist just decides to go through. He doesn't care. He'll go where he wants to, and then there's a potential consequence for folks that just get in there when they don't care. So what is it we're supposed to do? Where do we turn for help? So the current version of the MUTCD there, picture of the cover on the left, and the standard roadway standard drawings 2024. Of course, the specifications are out as well. They came out, and specs and drawings came out in September. But we turn there for guidance. And then if we start to follow them, we'll see some of these statements as an example from the MUTCD. General fundamental principles about maintaining safe and reasonable accommodation for all types of mobility. In this one, you can see that bicyclists and pedestrians are noted at the end of the presentation. I'm going to show some things that were added into the MUTCD in 2023, or the version that came out in December 23, to the MUTCD and the responsibility that we have there. Who is responsible? Well, we are. Everybody. If you look at this cut right out of the MUTCD principles there, we're responsible for making sure things are set up properly. That we're supposed to be knowledgeable with the use of these documents, and then have people that even from the upper level management all the way to the guys placing the devices in the field that have proper training and know their job is so they can do the job properly. North Carolina's response to this requirement are some certification levels. And so one of them at the base level, if you will, if I'll start at the bottom of the page, would be work zone flagger, and then the installer, and then the supervisor. And these are in the standard specifications for NCDOT. Description of what that supervisor would be, the person that has that certification, designated as the competent person responsible for work zone traffic control activities. It could be for one project or multiple projects, depends on the scope of the project and the impact that project might have on the motorist in particular areas. As an example, the contractors that are working on 40 or 440, particularly in Wake County around Raleigh, they have numerous work zone supervisors always available to make decisions on their work zone traffic control setups. Whereas similarly, maybe in the western part of North Carolina, bridge contractors that are working in more rural areas or even dead end roads might have one work zone supervisor responsible for the activities of several different projects, as long as they are available to address any issues. On site in the field, a work zone installer always has to be on site anytime there's any type of work zone traffic control activity. And so that's a certification level. So this person, it should be one person per crew. An example would be where we have where there are some problems with this is if we use the example earlier that I showed in the video of the guys standing in the road doing this, the human error board. That's one crew working on one shoulder of the road. Directly across Cary Parkway in that video is another crew. So each one of those crews should have a work zone installer that's on site and available to address any issues or make changes as needed. And then the work zone flagger, that's a person operating a stop and slow paddle. Naturally, they're going to have to be flagger certified. But on top of that, NCDOT came out with a requirement in 2021 that anybody touching a work zone traffic control device getting out in a work zone at a minimum should have flagger certification, because in that certification there's basics work zone traffic control, the basics of PPE, things like that are required, even if they're not flagging. So those are the certification levels. That's when we respond to some of the problems set forth by motorists causing problems in work zones. Speaking of flaggers, first off, here's the layout, what motorists should see if they encounter a flagging operation. The signs that are in place, the layout for where the flagger should stand in relation to the tapers, the amount of cones or whatever traffic control device you're using to delineate where that work zone is. So every time you ride through a flagging operation, it's always interesting. I rode through one on my way here, coming down Walker Street. The signs were in place very well. The signs were placed very well. You could see the signs. But as I approached where the flagger was standing in the middle of the road on the closed lane side, and there was not an adequate taper to show where the lane truly was closed. So it was a setup really for that, like the video I showed earlier, where the guy was standing in the middle of the road and would have the potential to get run over. Not sure whose project, not even sure. Oh, there, it is somebody who doing fiber or telecom work. I noticed the name on the truck there. And it was a traffic control company doing the setup. So here's one place you would turn to look for the proper setup, proper signing for a flagging operation. What you see in the field sometimes are what you see in this picture here. Person sitting in the middle of the road there, standards with the signing. The guy went down the hill around the curve there. The guy was not doing one-handed push-ups. And so I told him, I said, hey, your sign told me. Well, no, I didn't say anything to him, but it's just a matter of maintaining traffic control. And then over the picture on the far right, guy's sitting in the truck with his arm out the window, operating the stop and slow paddle. Some other little pictures here of do we always need to use humans for flagging operations? And we can see some of the potential problems there. There are some automated devices that can be used in lieu of putting humans out there. One of them is called an AFAD, automated flagger assistance device. You may have seen these being used. They've been around since about 2010. I had the opportunity to play around with these a lot back in the day. This setup requires an operator. One of the people in the picture there is the operator of this AFAD. That person has to be able to stand or sit. They can be sitting somewhere in a position to where they can see both of these trailers on either end of the work zone. And as long as they're not further away than 1,500 feet, and they can operate it, let that handle traffic. Another automated device is a portable signal system. Now, these two devices, AFADs and signals, are devices that have been evaluated and approved by NCDOT for use in lieu of flaggers. Naturally, with signal systems or AFADs, they don't solve every problem. You can't use them in every instance, but they do go a long way towards expanding workforces for people that do this type of operation, and makes it safer for the humans that are flagging to not be on the shoulder of the road. Portable signal system and the AFAD requires that the person operating them have flagger certification and some type of training from the manufacturer or supplier of that device that brings them out there. The signal systems have been traditionally used in longer term operations like bridge construction or temporary intersection management, and then in more recent years used for flagging operation. There's a drawing, here's a standard drawing right out of the NCDOT roadway standard drawings if you want to use the signal system to set up. So here's the layout that you would use. You could see the position of the system there. Standard drawing numbers referenced there at the bottom right-hand side of the page. A few pictures from the use of signal systems instead of flaggers, places I've been or folks have sent. This is bridge going over the Alligator River in the eastern part of the state. So you would never put a flagger on that bridge, but you could put a signal system there. And what this did for this operation, it was guys doing bridge inspection. What it did for them was allowed them to make that the duration or the delay for people getting across the bridge shorter because they didn't have to put the flaggers all the way down at either side of the bridge. And just another picture there. It's summertime, so I thought it's nice to have water pictures. Downtown Raleigh, where they used the portable signal systems there to manage traffic, and they used a bigger system as they came out of the side road, and they all communicated with each other there. Just another example, that same project in Raleigh. Pipe work over on Jones Sausage Road. So again, There's signal system there instead of flagger set up. Another downtown application where they used them, where they put in a temporary crossing. So folks would have signals at that crosswalk. A couple more of the portable signal systems in action there, haul road crossings, etc. A more intricate setup, if you will, more involved. This was on the LaSalle Street Bridge going over I-77 in Charlotte. We set this one up with a turn lane, turn arrow, radar shooting down all the approaches to manage traffic. And these were out there almost 18 months. And they were there, and while they were doing the work, the permanent signals were in place, but they were not aligned properly while they did the shift of traffic. So they were able to use that. More recently, this is also on LaSalle Street. The very similar system was used over on Hillsborough Street at Powell Drive. I'm not sure if they're still out there or not. They've been out there. They were out there for several months. Well, just in case there's a balloon, With this one, I show this one just as this is another expansion of the use of automation or some device for work zone traffic control, particularly with signals. This is on the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's a project I was involved with. The signals were 4,500 feet apart. They took it down to two-way, one-lane traffic with the use of signals while this work was being done on the parkway. Of course, low speeds, lower volumes of traffic. The delay in between the two signals, it took 8 minutes to get you through based on the speed you were able to make it down the hill, back up the hill in one lane. When we first set them up, there were a good number of non-compliance, people running the red light. They tried different things, put up static signs, and then we came back and put this little message board in there to show people that there was a delay. When we pick up in the video, the little message board that's mounted up there on the mast arm tells people that the wait time starts at 8 minutes. And that goes the whole time until we got to the 2-minute point. And then we said wait time 2 minutes, and then it counted down to what you're seeing here. Now, that countdown is not something you would do in town or any other location. The Army Corps of Engineers let us do this. And then they were allowed to go, and they moved their way through, and then we changed the message the same. Work zone, please drive slow. In the evaluation, when I was up there on this project, folks would come up to that light. They would see wait time 8 minutes. People would, stop their vehicles, get out, walk around. So the whole thing is, remember, I go back to don't know, don't see. You're letting people know that there's this long delay. It improved the driver behavior going through that project. And just a few more pictures of signals used in other applications. Pedestrian accommodations. How do we get people moving through work zone locations on foot or as bicyclists? Must mean that I'm getting close to the end of my presentation because it says before you walk on. Pedestrian accommodation. So we'll look at a few things here. This might not be adequate pedestrian accommodation. Chain link fence, vertical construction, keeps the pedestrian off the sidewalk from getting bricks not dropped on them, but forces them, in this case, out into the travel lane. And the language in the MUTCD says, thou shalt not mingleth pedestrian. No, it says you shouldn't put motorists, or pedestrians mingling with motorized vehicles. Please let me advance. How about that? I got this far, Steve, before.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So this is out of the 2023 MUTCD. There's some pretty good drawings on. It's basically they've improved the theme of what they previously had. They being the folks in the MUTCD, to show that in this case, if we create a pedestrian pathway, that we need to make it ADA compliant with the surface. So this is a picture. This is in Greenville, North Carolina, where here's the adaptation. There was a pedestrian detour and accommodation setup and pay items for it in the project. And here's their response and how they built it. They used what's called pedestrian barricades, and then they used a surface material that's on top of ABC to have that transitional surface for folks in wheelchairs. Or if you're visually impaired, you can feel your way along the pedestrian barricade. You can see the picture on the left just shows going down the pathway, and on the right it shows that it's kind of a cantilevered support, if you will, to keep those barricades in place. And some information from Plastic Safety Systems. One of the ways that they have of addressing the needs that MUTCD is set forth with ADA compliant devices, and a couple devices that they have there that are available. And then how that's ADA compliant for people that are not only in wheelchairs, but then visually impaired. Another method is to use water-filled barrier. So to separate vehicular traffic from where the pedestrian pathway would be. And this is an application here. One of the things I pointed out, it's very interesting how they solved their drainage issue there, highly engineered drainage, mitigating the water that would have gone through there. What do you do about folks that are on bikes? And these are a couple of drawings I pulled from the MUTCD, but these are new in this latest version, because there's a lot more people using bikes. What do we do with them? So here's advanced warning, the layout to let the motorists know and the bicyclists know where they're supposed to be. Another pathway created there to allow the pedestrians and the bicyclists to move. And then, of course, setting up, look how intricate this bicycle route detour is to get safe accommodation for bicyclists as they move their way around. Where all this information comes from, where you can get it, is these links. And I guess we'll be able to make these links and put them in the presentation if you need to get to them. Roadway standard drawings, the work zone safety training requirements on the NCDOT website, the vendors that supply that training, as well as JMT, our name is there, MUTCD, the 11th edition there. The stuff, if you need to look into vendors that can supply it, then a few vendors there. Brands is local, and then the signals and the AFADs that came from Horizon or Synergy. Plastic Safety did or PSS is responsible for those pedestrian barricades and some other devices. So who is responsible? Who carries the responsibility for making sure traffic control and everything is safe and keeping it maintaining it safe as you move through these work zones and keep them maintained? Well, we all bear, pardon the pun, the responsibility.
It seems like the right thing to do, right?
Right. And there we go. I know companies want to hire this bear, but I have yet to be able to find where he lives. Yeah. And that view of the bear, I guess, signifies that I'm at the end of what I have to present there. Anybody have any questions or comments?
So we didn't have any questions, but I had a question though. As far as the difference between flaggers versus using signals, have there been any studies done do folks pay attention more to the flaggers or to the signals?
I don't know the answer, Steve, if there's been any studies done.
Yeah.
I can find the answer for you though. All I've gotten is verbal communication and not a documented study that's been done. Yeah, I would be surprised if it's not out there and I just haven't seen it or asked to see it. So I'm glad you asked that, because I'll ask the folks that I deal with on those. From personal experience of setting them up in different places, particularly on bridge projects in remote areas, I'll set the signal up. Have been standing right there, and people stop. And I'm always surprised when I first do that they actually stop when they see the red light. Does that mean they always stop at every incident? No, but I don't know the answer. That's a great question. I'll see if I can find the answer for you.
Hey, so with the system with the control arms at either end, they have to see each other, right? So you if you had foliage that was in the way, you'd have to clear that out first.
The operator has to be able to see both of those trailers, one on either end, or however they're mounted. Some of them are on pedestals that, just a battery and controller cabinet with the arm that comes up. But as long as the operator can see both of those devices and the traffic queued up at either end, then they can operate it. And folks that do that, they'll tell me, yeah, they park in their pickup truck along the shoulder somewhere where they can see everything. So it doesn't have to be necessarily line of sight for the device, although the radio communication, it might be beneficial. But the radios these days are being used on those devices are pretty stout and seem to be robust enough to be able to communicate it through foliage and some other things.
So we got a couple of questions here. First one from Keith Keen. Are accreditations required to assemble a traffic control plan in North Carolina?
A traffic control plan, you mean? Like to draw a
Yes.
plan or implement? So the interesting that you asked that to draw the plan or stamp it. For a number of years, there's been discussion of a work zone traffic control designer that had some training specific to work zone traffic control setups. That hadn't been implemented yet. But if you're aside from a PE, if that's what you mean, there's no special designation or accreditation for that as it exists right now, although it's in
Okay.
conversation and discussion.
Got Bob Schultz saying, can you explain that you can not use a flagger 24/7 and the use of AFAD or portable sign signals are options when the lane closure is continuous on a two-lane, two-way? Said
Right.
2L.
So great point, Bob. So the use of portable signals for a long time were used on those two-lane, two-way roads where you had to maintain that alignment for over 24 hours, for extended use. And so they use signals instead of flaggers. Of course, you can flag at night. It's not the most desirable thing because there's additional lighting and other things. South Carolina, as an example, requires message boards to be used in that application. But I hope that addresses the question, Bob. It's a great point.
Also, too, what can be done in the specifications for traffic control? We put the specs out there, and then we get out in the field, and the contractors are kind of doing their thing. You give them a warning. What are some things, some verbiage that could maybe go in the specifications to maybe give it some more teeth, so that if they're not performing well, that there's things that we can do.
Yeah. Now, from my personal experience of doing traffic control, what got my attention the most, liquidated damages, the risk of having the project shut down. So notice that these aren't necessarily do it because it's safer, it's do it because it's not going to cost you money. And unfortunately, when you hit people in the pocketbook, that's when it gets their attention. My opinion is having things to put teeth into the specifications and the requirements is, the additional penalties, if you will, or fines of liquidated damages or work stoppages, which is costly. The backside of that, well, the other consequence is, and also again from personal experience, is litigation. Accidents occur, tragedy for people that are involved in the accidents, litigation for the people involved with setting up the traffic control, not just me, the person that shoved the drum in the road, but the agency, if you were the one person that designed it or had authority to maintain, make sure I was doing it properly on up the food chain. So those are the only things that I could think of. That maybe there's others that can think of other things.
Yeah, those are good. You were talking about litigation, Mark. Have you been involved with any litigation or being you know, an expert on any type of case for traffic
Um,
control?
no, I have not. I personally have not been involved in being an expert. I have been sued corporately and personally for accidents that occurred in work zones back when I was doing traffic control. I know at JMT Engineering, the Mark Teague and then, of course Jim Kellenberger as well. They both are expert witness from time to time for cases. The ones I was involved with, both well, the two that stand out, um, fatalities were involved. The We had the work zones set up properly, signing was set up properly. Anything that we did that was a variance on a standard or whatever, we did it at the direction of, in one case, well, both cases were NCDOT projects, but so I personally and corporately we were released from any liability. One on the personal side, because later on I was a partner in a company. Um, we got sued. The company got sued. We sold the company. There was nothing in the lawsuit really. We did everything we were supposed to do, and that we had proved that already. But then they persisted for 3 years in the lawsuit, and I got named personally. Every year I was getting sued once a year at least for 3 years until and then we'd sold the company. But I was a owner at the time, and so that's my only experience is from that side of it, not from the being an expert.
You know, one of the things about traffic control is that they usually put the least paid person on the job, and a lot of times they're from temp agencies, right? And so you go and you say, well, we're not going to use that traffic control company again, and you know, and then they switch companies, and then the same people that were on the last job, or you know, if the other company show up on the job. So I
Yeah,
it seems as though it shouldn't be. It's kind of like school teachers. They should really get paid more, right? Because it's so important.
I agree. I agree. There's so much at stake with what they do, and I try to remind folks of that every opportunity I have. But it's the way of the world, you know, who can you get the most productivity out of, and you want to put them in the place where they'll be most productive. And unfortunately, it works that way.
Hey, we you know you talked about the fatality. Maybe you could talk a little more about like the specifics of that because it's so timely.
Yeah, it just I don't know. It hits close to home for me because I did that work and I had guys that did that work back in the day. And um, in this case, and all I know is probably what everybody else knows from reading, you know, the articles about it or seeing on TV. Uh, his truck was over on the right shoulder. He'd gone over to the median and he crossed more than 2 lanes to get over to the median. Took down the sign, laid it down, and he was just crossing back. And in general practice is to not cross on foot more than 2 lanes of traffic, um, because when you get further out than that, you're stranded. And it was early, it was 3:30 in the morning, I believe, so it was dark. The condition was, and the motorist probably didn't see him. I don't know all the particulars, but um, I know that it's difficult to maintain guidance that has that in writing. Don't do that. You know, don't walk across lanes of traffic. I also know the complexities of trying to set things up in the median side, where you've got, you know, an 8 foot wide shoulder that you can get your vehicle down, but you can't get out of the vehicle because you got concrete barrier to your left, or how hard it is to work in that environment. So at the end of the day, I mean, there are ways to mitigate that by using rolling roadblocks or a shadow of a TMA truck. Again, these add um, more manpower, more vehicles, more money to that setup of what should be a relatively, you know, conceived of simple setup. Um, you know, that's my feeling on that. I know what I tell people or instructed my folks back then was to not cross 3 lanes of traffic. Heck, not cross 2 lanes of I-40 if you could avoid it. And that, but you know, a 2 lane, 2-way road, then that's a little different. But the safest bet way is, of course, to go down, ride down each shoulder set things out so you're not having to do that. And I've stood right next to my guys when they pick up a sign, a rigid sign, step out into the roadway, but the oncoming traffic happens to be coming from the direction that they're shielded with. They can't see them because that's where they got the sign. It's just things we do, without thinking sometimes. And unfortunately, there's a price to be paid there. Some uh, in certain instances.
There are no other questions, and I've run out of questions myself. So it seems like a good place for us to stop. And Mark, thank you for presenting a timely topic and an important topic. Um, so, by the way, if thank you for attendees attending. We appreciate it. We got one question from Bob. Can WFB water fill barriers be used for a deductible device for PEDs?
Yes, water-filled barrier was approved for, for folks that visually impaired that could feel along the top and tap the cane along the base. And it doesn't, it can be supported without any protrusion into the pathway. And so, yeah, that's an approved device for pedestrian accommodation.
Alrighty, so for those who joined us but maybe came to us from LinkedIn and you want to get the emails each month for the different webinars, lunch and learns, just send me an email. We'll put you on the list, and we're not going to bug you. You'll get 2 emails a month, and you can join as needed. So our next lunch and learn in September is going to be September 25th at 11:30 a.m. And the topic is cool pavement sealers attacking the urban heat island effect. We're going to be talking about how to select the roads, the benefits of using the technology, and the discussion of lead credits. And our presenter next month will be Evan Sealer with Sealmaster. All righty, folks. Well, thank you again for attending, and we will see you next month. And Mark, thank you for presenting today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for allowing me to do it. Take care and be safe, everyone.
Take care, everybody.